This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. This episode is brought to you by the team at the Real Soil Company. Launched to the market in 2020, the Real Soil Company proudly offers new organic, peat-free SuperSoil. Packed full of organic nutrients for optimal plant health, SuperSoil's natural boosters will stimulate quicker plant establishment and better resilience against pests and diseases, whilst also enabling edible crops to benefit from nutritional enhancement and a higher crop yield. The enhanced soil also offers better water retention and release for optimum plant growth, whilst providing a more balanced and workable material for gardeners. As a special offer for listeners, the Real Soil Company is offering 5% off all orders of its new SuperSoil throughout May and June 2021. Simply visit the link in the show notes and enter the code ROOTSANDALL5 at the checkout, all uppercase. Today's episode is the first in another new series called the Roots and All Takeover, where I hand the microphone over to an individual or group of people and they produce the content for the episode. There are no rules, they have complete free rein. The idea being to give an audio platform to people that don't already have one. So this first takeover is by the Young Propagators Society and features a chat between Ellie and Sophie, the founding members of the society, Michal, who's a dendrologist at Kew, and Natasha, a builder and gardener. And they talk about the challenges, successes and techniques they've discovered when propagating a very diverse range of plants.
This is the Roots and All podcast being taken over by the Young Propagators Society with me, Ellie Pay, Sophie Cook, my friends Natasha Bullen and Michal Dvorak. The Young Propagators Society is a society for people who are interested in propagation and want to learn more about it. So I thought a conversation about propagation would be fitting. So first, let's find out about everyone. Michal, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Currently I'm from Prague, Czech Republic. Moved to England 5 years ago. Currently I work at West Timber, the National Arboretum in Cotswolds, as a dendrologist, IDing trees on site, etc. And before that I had the pleasure to work at Kew Gardens as a propagator in the Arboretum nursery, where I met Ellie.
Awesome. And dendrologist, that's how you say
dendrologist.
It. That's just the study of trees.
Yeah. In this context of West Timber, it's basically a tree taxonomist. I wouldn't call myself a taxonomist though, but all related tree names wise and helping to decide which trees we want to get for the collection. And I have the luck to work closely with a propagator here, which is the best. Yeah, but it's not like tree climbing. We have arborists for that. I don't do tree climbing. So it's the tree name, the name wise.
Yeah, so walking around with the clipboard and a book of trees in one hand.
Yeah, actually now we have a database on tablets as well. So I just can walk around with a tablet, take a picture on the tablet, and it uploads it straight to the database. I can get a new label from the tablet. It's brilliant.
That is brilliant. That's amazing. What, you can just then send it back the information to say, print me a label, and then go pick it up. And you've got a new label.
Yeah, I say the label required, send it, and the lady that does labels and plant records, she picks it up and she does the label bit.
Oh my God, so efficient.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But yeah, that's not the main part, ordering labels. The main part is trying to decide which name would be suitable, and it can be quite frustrating when you're spending like a whole day on one tree and you just can't fit the tree for any name because it might be hybrid or something. To send them good pictures, but it's also like research, doing the plant record research. For example, we got this plant in 70s. We don't know, the name might be wrong. So going back, where did we get it from? Where did they get it from? Is it wild origin? Is it garden origin? Do they know the name? Do they have the correct name? Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, I really like the bit where I can travel around to see other botanic gardens because I need to see their trees and learn from there. So before COVID, and even during COVID, I got to travel mainly to Bedford, which is our sister site. And that's amazing. That's the conifer collection and other gardens. So it's got its perks other than being frustrated that I can't figure out the name.
Well, I know you love your conifers.
Yeah, they're the best.
What about you, Tash? You want to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Natasha. I'm 29. I live in southeast London, and I'm mostly just into plants as a hobby, propagation as a hobby. I've just sort of over the years but all my grandparents and my mum are all really into growing plants and stuff, and so I think that's where I got my taste for horticulture. I don't even know if you can call it horticulture. I'm not. It's not that official.
Well, you're gardening now as well, though.
Yeah, I've started gardening recently, just doing sort of gardening to people and stuff like that. Just putting the feelers out there, and yeah.
I've been trying to convince her for years to actually take it up, and it's taken you a while, but you still, like, every time we're always talking about your plants, your house plants. What have you got growing around you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've always had a fear that I don't know enough about plants, but I'm kind of just realising that yeah, I think everyone's sort of in the same boat. Everyone thinks they don't know enough about everything. Yeah, like everything that I know about plants, I've just learned through making them mistakes and carrying on. So I don't know. I suppose everyone does that.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah. Chili plants and tomatoes are my main thing that I'm growing at the moment. And then everything else is all cactuses and succulents. They're my favourite plant to play with, I guess.
Where do you keep them? Is it just inside your flat or house, or do you have like outside gardens?
I have them sort of spread throughout the entire flat on all the windowsills. But my sister moved in with me last year, and she quite quickly was like, "This is a situation that has to change." So all the plants moved to my bedroom, and that's where they all live now. So the whole window wall is basically just all covered in plants. It's a bit of a chaotic mess at the moment, but I'm going to eventually sort it out. It's going to look all beautiful and neat and tidy. And my bedroom will basically be a propagation station.
You're lucky you have such a big window.
Yeah, and it points the right way as well, so I get good sunlight for growing plants on the windowsills, which is good.
I have loads of them on the windowsills in my old house, and I bought loads of artificial lights for them during the winter because I had loads of saplings in winter as well, and that helps. And I have the heating mats for reptiles. You can buy them quite cheap from eBay. And I have maybe 4 or 5 of them, and they provide a bottom heat, which is quite good, and especially when the windowsills are cold in winter. English houses.
I'm finding my house is literally the worst for houseplants because it's an old stone house on the side of a mountain, so it's wet, really wet, and mold's growing everywhere. Then really cold, but then we have the fire, and so it's really hot when the fire's on, and it's also like a cave where no light penetrates. So it's like these poor plants, you literally, and because it's really small, there's like no kind of in between. It's either right next to the fire or in the cold part. So, I mean, I have killed quite a few of plants since living in this house.
My house plant graveyard is getting bigger. I should get some tips from Tash, because when it comes to house plants, I don't seem to be able to keep them alive very well.
I have massive luck with house plants. Mine's just the cactuses I can keep alive. The ones that you can ignore and they thrive on just solitude and loneliness. Basically, in my flat.
I never dared to try growing cactuses from seeds. It's sort of out of my focus. Is it easy or is it difficult?
I think I had a bit of a fluke. I've only grown cactuses actually from seed 3 times, and it's gone really well every time. But every time I read about it, everyone says it's really difficult, and I think that my most recent batch actually didn't go that well, and I was a bit sort of like, oh no, I'm not good at it after all. But yeah, I think, I don't know, again, trial and error. I didn't make any notes about what like soil mix and stuff I used for the ones that I did that went really well. So the ones that haven't worked, I don't know if it's a change in soil mix, if it's just a different time of year or what, or better seeds. I've grown some barrel cactus babies. I collected the seeds for them in Tenerife, and they all sprouted. They germinated really well. They've been growing really well. And then another bag of seeds I bought on eBay from a cactus shop in Italy or something. Really bad. I had good germination, a good germination rate, but then they've all sort of just died off afterwards. And I think they're just too wet, I think, or something. Yeah. I don't know. I should really write all these things down so that next year when I do the next lot, I won't make the same. But
did you say that? Like, it doesn't surprise me that the seed that you collected yourself did well, because that's what I've always found is that fresh seed,
works better.
But then they did germinate, so I don't know. Maybe it was conditions.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right about writing things down. It's funny. I saw Michael shake his head. Like, no, I never, and I'm terrible for writing things down as well. But as propagators, we should be, because then we have to learn from it. But I think you just kind of accumulate it in your brain, you know, your past experiences, and
you should be able to remember it if you've done it and it worked well, and if it hasn't and it was a disaster, you would remember it well. And also, there's so many ways how to do one thing. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, I'm against the writing.
Yeah. I hate when people ask me advice for, like, you know, how to grow cactuses or succulents or whatever, because I just don't know. Like, their, you know, home environment could be completely different, and everything I say that's the best way to do it might be completely wrong for them. And
Sophie, what are you growing at Dixter?
I think what I'm growing is quite a lot, but what I'm kind of starting to move towards is away from kind of quite late hardwood cuttings into basil cuttings. That's my next, like, I'm just like changing over to that. And this winter I've already also like really gone through a lot of the kind of admin side of my propagation kind of schedule and organization and stuff. So I'm hoping that this year, moving forward, it'll be a lot smoother, and there won't
you
be
are taking notes
behind the radar and under the radar. And but yeah, so basil cutting. So I've got my eye on some Euphorbia, Epithenoides, and Midas, and I'm just waiting for the asters to go a bit further so we can do them. And the student Eliza at Dixter is forcing some dahlias on.
Oh yeah.
So that's her project. So yeah, but yeah, basil cuttings mostly at the moment that I'm kind of growing.
Can I ask you about the basil cuttings? Is it like a new growth shoot cutting?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the first growth, and I mean, this is how I've been taught to do it, but just take a little bit of the harder material from like the base of the plant, just so, because otherwise they're just way too soft, and they just wilt, in my experience. But yeah, it's like this really, like when they're, I don't know, maybe 3 inches, just over 5 centimeters, something like that. I like that length, but then other people do it differently. So, but that's why I like to do it.
Yeah, I did some Euphorbia yesterday. I went out. I feel like everything's really slow this year, or maybe
it is.
Is it? Okay. I was like, am I just really impatient, like really excited for spring?
Yeah.
But it's just slow. Well, I went out. Euphorbia is the only thing that's up. But that's great, because instead of if you take a normal cutting from it, then it just pisses out the sap, and I think it kind of almost bleeds itself. Like Euphorbia is a good success. So this way, you kind of, I don't cut, I rip, I jam my finger to the bottom. And then I kind of put pressure on it, so it then pulls down, and do it like a Michael's face. Do it like a heel cutting. So I kind of like push it down and rip it. So then I get a little bit of the base attached, and and I think that's how it is easier, and especially with dahlia, because then you have a bit of tuber, which then regrows the tuber instead of having to make it again itself. Is there? I was wondering, what stuff you can't do basil cutting from? Like, I was thinking like Actea. I can't just go in.
No.
But what's the difference between like an aster that you can and an Actea that you can't?
I don't know. It's funny because I was actually kind of wondering myself, like what is it about a plant that makes me think I can do it from basil cuttings? Because I've got some genes in a stock bed that I've been working on, and I was like, yeah, that looks like a plant that I could do basil cuttings from, even though I've never done it, like needed to do it before.
Which plant was that?
I think it was GM Flames of Passion or something. I don't know. GM. And yeah, and I don't know what it is. Is it something to do with like the crown of the plant, like something to do with the physiology of it, or just how it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it must be like what the stems form into later, and because you kind of like you say, you look at a plant and you're like, oh yeah, I can take basil. Yeah, you know which one. What are your guys' prop setups? We've heard a little bit about Tasha's. Well, Tash, do you use heat mat as well?
Yeah, actually this year I've got a heated propagation tray that I've had for ages, but only used it for the first time this year. And it's worked wonders. all the chili seeds that I planted in the heated tray have like 100% germination, and they've gone wild, and the other ones are still like struggling to kind of break their way out of the soil. Don't know if they've just got weaker roots or what. I don't know how the whole system works, but it does. So I'll be using that from now on. And then every year I've got my little covered propagation trays that I'll sow everything that I grow goes in those, and then once they pop up, I'll either leave them in the trays for years or pop them on or whatever takes my fancy, really. You've seen them before. 6 different kinds of cactuses or whatever, all growing in the same seed.
Yeah, and then eventually potted up into a Hulk figurine or
some makeshift receptacle I found somewhere.
I love it. And I've been seeing on the internet people like kind of, it's almost like a realization that a plant pot doesn't need to just be like a normal terracotta pot. Like you can
hold dirt in it,
stuff on it, or exactly. You can like use whatever. It's really cool. I also like kind of just using water, just having big vases. People are growing things.
I got asked a really interesting question by one of the volunteers at Dixter, and he said he's got some cuttings that root in water, and he said, why don't they rot like they can in soil? I think that was his question. It was basically why do cuttings that are struck in water, why do they tend not to rot? Because they're just in water, or I don't know. He was just
because overwater a plant that's in soil and it will die. But if you put a plant in just water, it won't.
That was his question. So why if you overwater a pot of cuttings, they'll rot. But then what if you just put the cuttings straight into pure water? They root like. And I just think it's something to do with the bacteria in the soil, or
I would say so. Yeah, some plants will do it, and I think if they wouldn't rot, it's because of there's so much living stuff in the soil that would make it rot. Yeah. I was gonna ask you the water one. I've seen by my friend. He's got this hydroponic propagator. Have you seen it? It's like a box at the bottom. There's I think like a little mister or sprinkle that springs bottom of the cuttings constantly with water, and the cuttings, herbaceous but even woody cuttings, are plunged from top, and their bottom is being sprinkled by this water, and the top is normally in a little glass house, and normally. And some people root even like greenwood and even semi-hardwood cuttings of conifers and other trees like this in this little hydroponic propagator. I don't know how it's called now, and I'm not very good in describing it, but I was wondering if you've seen anything like that, because I'm thinking of buying one and trialing it.
That sounds amazing.
I haven't seen one.
Lots of herbaceous stuff they do mainly there, and tomatoes and that sort of stuff. Loads of herbaceous, but I'm interested to try it for the woody plants. the bottom of the cuttings, it's in the air, but there's 100% humidity, and the water gets changed as well because it sort of circulates. You put some rooting hormone in the water, and it doesn't rot because it's not in the water. But I really want to try that one.
My dream is to get a dew point.
Oh yeah,
a dew point propagator. It's like a big propagator bench, and then you have a lid and stuff, and it basically has all the sensors to bring the mist in, and then get it to dew point. So what you'd have dew on the grass, and then it just stays at that. So it's just perfect for rooting things because plants literally don't have to put any energy in at all.
Does it have the leaf sensor, sort of the metal?
I think it must
board?
Be. Yeah.
And when the water would start sitting on the metal, it would get heavy and then turn the misting off. I've seen those in botanic gardens when they use them for propagation. Leaf, something it's called. Yeah, I like it. It's very precise.
Yeah. Yeah, it's better than what I've got right now, which is just like I got like fern sporlings all around my prop unit, and I have to, in the summer, I have to just be misting it the whole time because we have misters, but they don't do it. They either get things too wet or not wet enough. So I'm constantly in there working on it.
I know, it's so funny.
Yeah.
I feel so strange now, like because I've got a heat bench with like a tent over it, and I bet like I water it like once a day maximum now, and then it's so different to the summer. Like the double frame that I use to strike cuttings. I think when it was really cold, I was watering it like twice a month, and in the summer it's like twice a day. So it's so different.
And sometimes it's not even for the water; it's just to get some cold water in there, just to cool the whole area down, isn't it? It gets really warm. I have a confession to make that I don't really care. I mean, I do care for cuttings. I love potting them up, and when they've actually taken, and I like taking them, but the care of them, I don't care for at all. I could just miss out that part of like waiting for them, just sitting there misting them all the time. But seeds, I love every single process of that. What's your favorite?
Mine, I've got different favorite. I think because I quite like succulents, and there are so many different, like most succulents you can propagate like 3 different ways. Like seed, you can take leaves off and propagate them. You can break a piece off and stick it in the ground, and so I do quite like that kind of, I don't know, versatility that you can take a bit of a plant and grow it into another plant. Specifically with taking cuttings of things that aren't succulents, I'm pretty bad at that. I can keep them alive for a little while and then they almost always die. I'm just trying to think now if I've got any plants in the house that that I've grown from cuttings, and I don't think I have. I always use water, propagate them in water, and just making sure the water's clean and the thing you're keeping it in is clean and stuff like that. Like, I'm terrible at it. So,
cactus, you cut off a bit and then you callus that, and then again you do like minimal watering, don't you? I don't know. I don't think I've done like succulents, like leaves. Yeah.
Well, they seem to be really good at sort of sensing where water is, and then they will just put out roots to whatever side of the plant the water happens to be on.
Mm-hmm.
They'll sort of do that. Like I've noticed bits of plants that have sort of fallen off and landed, next to a windowsill or something, will always grow roots on the side that's closest to the window, because that's the sort of damp side, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I usually, if I'm doing leaf propagations, I'll lay them on the soil, and if I water the soil at all, I'll water it from the bottom so that it soaks up, and then the top kind of stays dry, but the roots know where the water is, and they'll go down into the soil and find it. But as I said earlier, succulents just like being ignored. If you pay too much attention to them, they'll just die out of spite, I think. So it's better to just take all the leaves off, put them all on a tray for a couple of weeks, and then put them on soil and just leave them. That's what I do.
And also pups as well. That's a great thing about echeverias and other succulents.
So they'll just grow another baby.
Yeah.
Just on them. If you break a piece off, usually loads of new rosettes grow like where the broken off piece has come from. They're good. The only problem I have decided that leaf propagations of echeverias and stuff are not my favourite, because as interesting as they are, it does once it's formed that tiny little new plant, and the parent leaf is like withered up and died. That seems to be the point where I'm struggling, because their root systems are quite sort of delicate, and if you leave them to dry out too much, they will die. But again, if you water them too much, the roots rot and then they die. So once getting them from a leaf to a tiny plant, I can do, and then it's growing that into a bigger plant. So that is the difficult I'm finding at the moment.
Yeah, because before it was still relying on mum.
It's got its own lunchbox that lasts for like a year. Yeah. And they do. They'll just sit there and absorb all the nutrients from the leaf that they've got, and then once they start getting towards the end of that, they put the roots out, and then it's that kind of bit where they've got new delicate roots that's sort of tricky. I don't know.
You do conifer cuttings then? Do you, Michael?
Well, I do prefer seeds. Obviously, it's amazing to see the seedling, but you can't avoid not to do cuttings because it's just so much hybridization, or you just don't get seeds. But I want to learn properly how to do grafting, because you can do crazy stuff when you know how to graft.
Why do you say properly? You have learnt, but not properly?
Yeah, I've done so much theory of it. We've trialed it at uni and everything, but I've never successfully grafted a plant, but I can't say I've tried enough. And I would like to go somewhere for like a work experience in some proper grafting place, to commercial, and learn how to do it, because I've read even this guy was trying to propagate this rare conifer from China, and he took some sign material and then dig up some roots of the plant and tried to graft that sign onto the roots of the plant, which he took cuttings of the roots as well and tried to graft that one. That sounds crazy. And you can do so much. Yeah, that's your options are way broader if you can graft stuff, because if it's some rare conifer, it doesn't produce seeds, or the seeds would get cross-pollinated with some other of its genus, then you just take a little bit of grafting material and you're sorted. Although they might be weaker, or there's more issues with if it's grafted. It can fail, it can snap when it's older. Or I've seen we have this rare Mexican spruce which is grafted, and it's grafted maybe this above the ground, and the rootstock is this thick, and then the sign is already this thick, so it's gonna snap and break.
There's a podcast and they won't see you.
I was showing really small diameter and then very bigger diameter.
Okay, good.
But I definitely, I do prefer seeds. That's so much fun. It's brilliant. And this time of year when the seeds start coming up, I have some lithocarpuses, like this oak-related trees that are just about to show their roots at the bottom of the pot, but still hasn't shown any above ground part. So seeds are brilliant, but you need to be able to be flexible if you want to do conifers.
Yeah. I'm still stuck on the grafting straight onto roots.
I want to know if that works. Did that guy succeed with his experiment of grafting onto the root?
What plant was it?
Cathea. Yeah.
Can you take root cuttings from it then? There is the energy in the plant to produce more plants from roots.
I think it's very alternative way how to do it, and I just read he's trying to do it. I have no idea. He said he found some promising roots under the plant, so he took the roots and then tried to graft some of the sign material on it. I have no idea if he succeeded or not, but I've heard about this sort of stuff before, once, twice, but I've never seen it, nor heard of it, nor trialed it.
Yeah.
It's very eccentric, but he's doing it because there's almost no seeds available. Cuttings don't work, really. And grafting is very difficult as well. It's very hard to propagate. Some people grafted on some other pine trees, but it's sort of, you can't really propagate it much in different ways. So people try, the plant enthusiastic try all sort of weird stuff.
Is that the plant that was behind a cage at Kew?
Yeah, that one.
Wow.
We went to seed, and so we had to climb into the cage and work from the inside out, and then collect every seed. It was fantastic.
Yeah, very rare stuff, but very hard to propagate. I was gonna try air layering of it, but I haven't got around to it yet.
Seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah, we do. Penny, our propagator here at West Timber, she does loads of air layering of rhododendrons and other stuff, and it's a brilliant way how to propagate stuff if you don't want to look after cuttings, or you just do the air layer with sphagnum moss and rooting hormone. She wraps it in a black plastic sheet, leave it there for a year or two. Then she just comes around, cut it, and she's got a rooted plant.
Great. Also, a massive rooted plant. Yeah. Got a fully mature, however big you take it. The ones at Kew, they would do the pandanus, and it's they were basically trying to get a new plant, like a whole new plant, out of a pandanus, and you'd still have the original, which was massive, and then you would have a new one, which would also be like ready to plant straight into the tropical house.
Yeah, I like the idea of air layering or layering in general. Yeah, I do some of it when I walk around the collection. I just layer something, put like a wood on it so it roots, and then you have another plant. I think you can do root cuttings of cactuses, can't you? Root cuttings, root grafting.
Yeah, and I wanted to have a go at grafting, seeing how grafting would help boost the growth speed of some of the baby cactuses that I've got. So just to kind of, because it takes like 5 years for them to get golf ball size, so I kind of want to speed that bit up. It can take 5 months instead of 5 years if you graft them. But I also didn't want to lose all the seedlings that I had, so I thought I'll wait until I've got a bigger collection and then have a go.
Well, experiment with half of them or a couple of them.
Yeah, but they're my babies, Ellie, and I don't want to just sacrifice them like that. That's the problem I've got.
Sophie, do you remember when you sent me a text about tomato seedling grafting, and our minds were blown? You can graft a seedling like straight up, just germinated, and then you go and you just slice it off. I've seen a video of it. They use a little razor blade and they just slice it in half, and then get the top, the scion. Yes. Yeah. And then stick it on top with a little like plastic tube so it stays in place. And then it just will, at that age, will just. Yeah,
I bought a plant once that was a combination tomato and potato plant, because they're from the same family, and they come as a little seedling, but it's already been grafted and stuck back together. It's literally just the bottom of a potato plant and the top of a tomato plant spliced together.
Has it grown?
Yeah, you get tomatoes on the top and potatoes on the bottom. It's great.
Really?
Yeah, many potatoes, but I did get a couple. Yeah.
Well, I've never heard that. That's crazy. But was the crop good?
I seem to remember it not being that good, but also I am full of enthusiasm at the beginning of the tomato growing process, and then I always just leave them and I get my watering messed up, and then that affects them, and so I don't think I got a good crop of potatoes or tomatoes. Definitely got more tomatoes than potatoes, but I didn't put a lot of effort into that. Was about 10 years ago or something, before I was actually into growing things.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really quite good though for people with a lack of space, and they don't actually need loads of potatoes or tomatoes, then
you could have one plant that does it all.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if I could even take a sprouted potato out of my cupboard, let one of the shoots grow tall, and then splice one of my tomato plants onto it. Maybe I'll have a go.
Brilliant idea. Yeah.
How it goes.
Oh yeah, they have two different requirements. The potatoes, they want sort of a cooler environment. The tomatoes, they want hot. So yeah, it's for fun probably, but not for not for loads of production.
Yeah.
That's why I have to get actual seed potatoes so that it's all healthy. And that this year I've been reading about the difference between potatoes and seed potatoes and found out that they're pretty much the same, but seed potatoes are more disease resistant. So I never understood why people buy potatoes to plant when you could just plant the ones that are sprouted in your cupboard.
Well, I
did fast and it was fine, but obviously I maybe just got lucky that they weren't diseased. I don't know.
Yeah, if you would grow them for a few more years, the viruses would take over and it would gradually get lower and lower crop.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't really know anything about vegetable growing. I'm learning a lot now. Got an allotment, and so that's been fun. But it's funny how you do know a lot about some plants. Like now I know about the tropical plants from high altitudes really well, but they're not like just common flowers or like cut flowers. People ask me, "Oh, what's this in a bouquet?" And I'm like, "No idea."
Ellie, I wanted to ask you. To know, Ellie, you were saying with your cuttings, they just sit there because I mean, a lot of the plants. I really like cuttings. But I think it's because a lot of the plants that I grow, they're like, good garden plants that are like vigorous, like kind of reason they're not too difficult to crop from cuttings. Like how long would you say some of I know you do a massive diversity of plants, but what would you how long would you say some of your plants take to root from cuttings? Say you took a softwood or something.
Oh, a really long time. So we've got in North Wales, we've got just a really short season. So I mean, it's slow for you guys right now as well, but it's really slow for us. And then it's going to be the equinox soon, and then that's kind of when it kicks up. But it's just like we don't have the right light levels or even the heat, to be honest. So even stuff like fuchsia down at Dixter, bam, you take that, you just come up instantly. I do. We've got fuchsia boliviensis, which you look at it and you're like, great, that looks like I could just look at it and it will root itself. I have to wait 2-3 months for it, depending on because that's a good thing. I can keep taking them. So if it's in the middle of summer, it will take real quickly. But at the moment, I'm going to be waiting a long time to pop that up. And then other things, I do massive. Blethen keeps telling me I'm not taking cuttings big enough because he wants the plant big to pot on straight away. So sometimes I take Oreopanax cuttings. You can't even see how the length of my forearm. I mean, they eventually root, but it takes a very long time. So patience, which is the problem because I need to grow a lot of plants, a variety of plants that take a long time to root, but in a small space.
Classic.
Yeah. Also, I've had to really learn the patience of not potting up until spring. And even
I've learned that I've definitely learned that this year.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah.
I've learned it last year.
It's so weird. Why does it take us so long? But it's like, oh no, you're right. I really can't put up. It's worth the wait. It's worth the patience.
Yeah.
Yeah. The successful rate is way higher when you wait. Yeah, I've learned it. A year ago here.
Yeah. Yeah, but I still
think it's good to try these things out yourself. I was told that it wouldn't work, that I would get a lot of death, and I was like, I want to see for myself. I want to make sure. So I potted on a bunch of stuff, and the vast majority haven't made it. So, but now I know. So.
Yeah.
So is that potting things on before spring then? Is that specifically cuttings that don't make it, or any kind of plants? And is it to do with the temperature, or just the shock of being repotted, or
young plants in general, because they wouldn't root through the soil and they would just sit on a wet soil all winter.
Yeah,
so you need to put them up not when they are becoming dormant or are dormant, but when they are about to be active and grow through the soil, because the worst thing is that they would sit on a big pile of wet substrate in their pot through the winter. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I've had to, I'm a serial overwaterer as well, which with growing succulents and cactuses is the worst, because they will just die straight away if you mess with them. But yeah, over winter they all go dormant, and it's like the last few years have been a real learning curve for me to just to not water them at all during the winter, basically. But I don't know, I hadn't really put two and two together that all plants have the same kind of, I don't know, schedule of needing
I keep overwatering over winter anyway, because you just can't not do anything.
Yeah. We're in lockdown. There's nothing else to do other than water the houseplants.
Well, at Krieg, and I was quite shocked at first, but now I've seen that it works. All the herbaceous perennials, over winter it's far too wet. If we kept them out in pots outside, they would drown and literally die in that winter. So we take them all inside and then don't water them, not once at all. Yeah. And at first I was like, well, they still, they need access to water. They're just in pots. They're not going to get it elsewhere. And then spring comes and they shoot up again. And then we stick them outside and they're fine. So that's something else I've learned, that you can just even I knew about it with bulbs and cactus, but I was surprised about that. You don't seem surprised then, Sophie.
Well, with these, there's a few things this winter they were only small plants, but they've been under glass since October or November, and I think I've watered them once. Some of them not at all, and that surprised me. But I mean, they're outside, and so they have a good water when I pot them up individual plants, and then it just, it's what we were saying about that there's not a big enough root system there to be taking up all that water. They just sit there and they don't need anything. But I mean, I'm kind of surprised in terms of a well-rooted herbaceous plant. But then,
I don't understand it. I've seen it elsewhere as well, that even trees in pots, they don't water them over winter. It's bone dry, but then the trees will sprout in the spring. I wouldn't be able to leave them so dry, because it's crazy.
Yeah, it is hard.
It works, but I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, it's okay, because that you can do that. I think it's just they're very tolerant, because we can also just be watering it every day in the winter.
Yeah, I think it should be slightly moist all the time, in general, even in winter, because even in winter the tree, or if it's not perennial that's got nothing above the ground, the tree still sort of respirate. Even when it's lost all its leaf, it's still losing some water.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I did have the idea today, you've all been traveling to amazing places, and so I just wanted to hear about what cool plants you've seen in their natural habitat.
Yeah, kauri trees. I went to New Zealand in 2019.
The Guthies.
Had the opportunity to go to a kauri forest, and they're amazing. Type of conifer. That's what, I know that much.
And
the oldest one in New Zealand is about 2,000 years old, and it's trunk diameter of 4.6 meters or something like that. And
I've seen pictures.
Stunning trees. But then there is a some kind of blight, I think, in New Zealand at the moment, which only affects kauri trees. There's a kauri dieback or something like that can be transported in soil. So one pinhead worth of soil is enough, if it's contaminated, to kill a whole forest of kauri trees, which when they're 2,000 years old is pretty devastating. So then there's quite a lot of work being done to try to keep the places where they grow kind of clean and stop people from traipsing in from other places with loads of dirt on their feet. But the problem is that the kauri trees are quite a big kind of tourist attraction, and so they want tourists to be able to go and look at them, but they also don't want tourists to spread all the dirty dirt everywhere. So it's a bit of a balance. And I just hope that they find a way to protect them, because they are amazing.
I've seen kauri trees grafted on monkey puzzles.
Really?
Yeah.
Monkey puzzle, favourite tree.
Yeah,
I'm going to do that.
They grafted them because they had spare rootstock of normal Araucarias monkey puzzles, and they grafted this kauri agathis on it, and it grew well. They're related, so yeah. Wow. And then it wouldn't mind the soil pathogen. But yeah, you don't want to lose the 2,000-year-old.
Yeah. That's amazing, isn't it? Like grafting's so crazy, because sometimes even the same genus doesn't want to graft, but then, you're in the same family? Yeah, sure, that's fine. Like, two other ends of the world? Yeah, okay, we'll take that.
Or here at West Timber, we have loads of limes. We have national collections of Telea, and we have grafted ones, and some of them are the rootstock, the intersection, and then the scion material on top, because the rootstock and the scion wouldn't like each other, so there's a third party.
Wow,
yeah, intermediate third party that they all like. So it's made out of three different trees. It's not uncommon in grafting, but I've never heard of it for lime trees.
That's mad.
So yeah, you can do crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I was going to say my favourite, the place I've been to see plants, I went to California in 2018, and the year before had been a super bloom, and I was like, I'm still going to go, but it won't be as good. But it ended up being like an even better super bloom.
And what's a super bloom?
Like, it's where there's loads of annuals that have a seed bank in and then if the rains are right, then they'll all germinate. And I think because it had been a really good year before, the seeds, and then they had best the next year. Really, they're not a practical plant for me to be growing here, because they're they're kind of Mediterranean climate, they're annuals, and I tend to prefer perennials and that kind of thing. But they're just so, there's this one Paulanthus inflata, which is known as the desert candle, and it's just, I saw a hillside of it, a really steep south-facing, really well-drained slope covered in these. They're about 2 foot tall. These bizarre-looking plants, and that was, I won't forget that in a hurry. That was really cool.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, it's a really cool plant and really easy to grow. It's an annual. It germinates like any old annual. And
have you introduced that at Dixter then?
So they've germinated. I've pricked them out, and I'm just growing more and more for the seed, just to get more and more seed. And I don't know, maybe someone will see it and think they want to put it in their display, and other people will start using it. But now it's just for the laugh, really, because it's just such a weird thing.
Okay, well, thanks guys for chatting with me today. I had a lot of fun talking prop. And thank you, listeners. I hope you've enjoyed the chat. And if you'd like to get involved with the Young Propagators Society, please find us at www.youngpropsoc.com, where you can get free access to all the society's zines.
Thanks to Ellie, Sophie, Michal and Natasha of the Young Propagators Society for taking over this episode. You can find out more about them in the show notes. If you or anyone you know might like to take over a future episode, get in touch at the usual place, podcast@rootsandall.co.uk. Thank you very much for listening. Please also go and check out this episode's sponsors, the Real Soil Company. They're offering 5% off all orders of their new SuperSoil throughout May and June 2021. Simply visit the link in the show notes and enter the code ROOTSANDALL5 at the checkout. And did I mention it's vegan? And if this year our veg gardens ever warm up enough to get going, here's Dr. Ian Bedford with advice about a bug that might cause you a problem.
It's probably a good idea to at least try and grow a few vegetables at home, particularly when we have a bit of time on our hands. Besides the pleasure of nurturing them through to maturity, there's also the assurance of knowing how they've been grown, and if necessary, what they've been treated with for pests and diseases. And probably the easiest group of vegetables to grow, whether in a pot, a garden bed, or an allotment, are the pod-bearing legumes, the peas and beans, and in particular, the broad bean. Their large seeds reliably germinate and can be sown in pots or directly into the ground from late autumn right through to late spring. Then with minimum effort, they'll grow and eventually produce pods that contain tasty, pale, kidney-shaped beans that can be harvested from early summer. As with most modern cultivars though, broad beans will attract the occasional pest problem, so it's certainly worth being aware of these and understanding the impact they might have on the plants and whether or how they need to be dealt with. And with broad beans, there's really just 2 insect pests that could affect them, but thankfully neither requires much effort, if any, in keeping them under control and protecting the crop. The most common will be the black bean aphids, usually referred to as blackfly, and often seen with black ants that farm them for their sugary honeydew. With small infestations, the plants will be fine if left untreated, and the aphids will usually end up as a valuable food source for other garden wildlife. But where larger infestations have developed, the plants can become weak and produce fewer pods, so they will require attention. And the simplest and safest way to do this is to just use water from a sprayer or a garden hose. Using the flat fan setting, the fine spray of water will knock the aphids off without damaging the plants. And by repeating this every few days, the aphids should soon be under control. The other common pest of broad bean is the Bean Weevil, a small dark brown beetle that emerges from the ground during spring to feed on the bean's leaves, causing distinctive notch-shaped damage around the edges. Its eggs are then laid into the soil, and the resulting larvae feed on the bean's nitrogen-storing nodules that form on its roots. Despite the visual leaf damage from the adults and the underground feeding of their larvae, the effects on a healthy, well-established plant will actually be negligible. So realistically, the bean weevil can be regarded as just a bit of a nuisance rather than a true pest, and could, perhaps, just be ignored.
You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.